Hey traders, it's John Fortune here with this week's weekly Forex forecast for the 8th of May to the 12th of May 2017. I'm going to start with the US dollar index and oil, and then I'm going to run through multiple currency pairs, finishing with gold and silver. So I hope you had a fantastic week. Last week it was a tricky one. We did have some pretty big news coming out of America. We could talk about that in a minute. But without further ado, let's jump onto the charts and see where the money is this week. US dollar index. We'll start with the US dollar index. You can see this candle here was actually on Wednesday. This was just after FOMC. We were sitting in this kind of continuation pattern to the downside, and we were sitting underneath this key level of resistance around the 12.25 area. We were looking for FOMC and also non-farm payrolls last week to potentially provide a catalyst one way or the other. We did get a push higher off of FOMC, which was pretty much a non-event. However, I mean, this was not hugely volatile. It just kind of made its way up there. And then, as you can see, we actually closed Friday with non-farm payrolls. Not exactly where we started FOMC, but pretty much in the same space. So it hasn't really given us any huge indication of what it's going to do next. However, we can see it did push higher on FOMC right here. So we do have to bear that in mind, as this could push higher and it could come up and test the top of this channel line here. We are, however, in a downtrend, and we are getting seeing this as a corrective move still. So the question is this corrective move over, or is this going to push higher up to test this trend line? Well, we're not sure. So because it's in the downtrend, denoted by this downward sloping channel here, we are going to have a bearish bias, but it's going to be a neutral to bearish bias on the US dollar index next week, and we're going to take each currency pair pretty much on its own merit. In fact, before let me just go back to US dollar very quickly before I just go on to oil. Yeah, we are looking for a test up here if it does bounce from this line here. But if we do start to see it break down, especially if it breaks out of this kind of upward, if you can imagine upward sloping trend line here, in fact, I can put one for you, out of this kind of area. If we start to get a breakdown into this area, we are going to be looking down to the 12,160 area as a continuation of this move here. So that is where we're looking to the downside next week if we see this starting to break down. Oil. Now, the reason I'm looking at oil is because we know that oil affects the Canadian pairs quite significantly, Canada being a major producer of oil. If we see oil declining, as we're seeing here, you will see a negative impact on the Canadian dollar. And if we see oil strengthen, you will, generally speaking, see strength in the Canadian dollar as well, as it benefits from an increase in oil prices. What we're seeing here, though, is on oil, we were expecting a pullback. We were accumulating at this area, and we did say to the downside we were going to look for this level down here, this support area, and also this support area of this upper sloping trend line. So this was an area of confluence, support confluence here. It pretty much went through this like a knife through hot butter, and as you can see, we had this big turnaround last Friday. We are expecting now oil to potentially come back and retest this support area and also this upward sloping trend line, and for this to turn into resistance. So we are expecting a pullback into this area before potential further declines on oil, probably down to the $43 a barrel area down here is where we're looking at for oil. So we do expect a pullback in oil before some further declines. Euro US dollar. Euro US dollar, we were seeing it accumulated under resistance here. It did break through, and we were looking to the upside for this downward sloping trend line here. Possibly even a retest of this upward sloping channel line. However, it would need to break through this pretty major trend line. Let's see. As you can see, this goes all the way back to the 2nd of the 5th, 2016. So it would need to break out of this downward sloping trend line before we see a test of this upward channel top here. However, if we get a bounce from this area, we are looking for a move back down to this resistance turn support at the 1.09106. One thing to remember, and I do want to speak to you about, is it is the French elections, the second round of the French elections tonight, tonight being Sunday the 7th. So you do need to bear that in mind. One thing to note is that if you can see here on the first round of the presidential elections, the big players and the big boys actually priced in a Macron win, which shows, if anything, maybe possibly certain lessons weren't learned before Brexit and Trump, when we saw the markets basically being completely found wanting. But they have priced in a Macron win here, so if Macron does win in the French elections tonight, you may see some minor moves to the upside. You may even see a gap, but I don't expect it to be as significant as this. However, if Le Pen wins and actually these traders here, the big institutions and the big players, are proven wrong in their speculation, then because of the already pricing in over here, you will see a pretty severe decline to the downside in euro pairs especially. So that is one thing to watch out for. It does make offering a forecast for some of the euro pairs next week slightly more difficult, because we can look at the technicals, but the fundamentals are yet to be seen. But we're going to take it on the technicals and just bear those the fundamentals in mind. So we are looking for a potential bounce off of here if there's nothing significant to the upside, and a pullback to this resistance and support area down here. However, if we do get a breakup and a breakout of this downward sloping trend line, we are going to look for a test at the top of the channel line next in this pair. Not a huge amount of room to go. You can see it's in an uptrend, so this is not an ideal pair really for next week as it stands right now. US dollar Japanese yen. US dollar Japanese yen, a little bit similar. We're sitting at the top of this resistance area here, this downward sloping trend line of this channel. If we get a bounce here, I am going to be expecting a potential retest of the 111.56 area, and if we get a breakthrough here, I will be looking for the retest of the confluence of this median line and also the support area down here. So what you might be seeing is, if this is going to push to the upside and this is going to follow on, this is just a correction for this move, and we're going to see further moves up. You may see it breaking through here and breaking down to this area to form a kind of head and shoulders pattern, which we know is a reversal pattern. So we are going to be looking for a potential reversal pattern here if they're going to continue this move to the upside. If they just break out of this channel line, that would be nice, because if they break out, we're going to be looking for a pullback, some accumulation in this area, and a continuation up to the 114.69 area of resistance up here. Pound US dollar. Pound US dollar, we were looking for a trade around this area. In fact, we took a few trades here, and we were looking for first this resistance area, and then we were looking for the 1.300 area, which we did expect possibly to be fulfilled last week, but it wasn't. If we get a pullback down into this resistance area here, turn support. So if it pulls back, this resistance area will turn support. I will be looking to take this price in this pair into the 1.300 area. As you can see over here, we'll be looking for longs up to this area, and if we get a break above this area, I'll be looking for more longs up to the 1.308 area up here. So if we get a pullback here next week, I will be looking to take a long position on this into the 1.300 area. US dollar franc. US dollar franc is in this wedge formation denoted by these two lines here. We did break down below this area of support here, and we were looking for it to turn. However, we never really got a pullback deeply into this. We kind of got this slight pullback towards it. It is an area, so it may have actually fulfilled here. But we were looking for further declines and a continuation of this move to the downside. We were looking for 0.98, and as you can see, it did come into this area last week. It in fact broke down slightly below this support level, although they are areas. That's something we have to bear in mind. But slightly more significantly, it did break and actually close down below this upward sloping trend line, or the bottom of this wedge. So we may be seeing further declines now in the US dollar franc, and if we do see further declines, we're going to be looking for the 0.98 psychological area next in this pair. If we get a bounce back inside the wedge, then I would expect this to potentially come up and test the top of the wedge here around the 1.000 area, psychological area, and also the top of the wedge up here. So that's where I'm looking to the upside, and to the downside we're looking at the 0.98 psychological level. Aussie US dollar. Aussie US dollar has maintained under this downward sloping trend line here. We got a bounce last week from this area. It did break through this support area here, and it did pull back quite deeply. We did say we're not going to look for longs on this unless we get out of this downward sloping channel, which we didn't. So we had a short bias on this last week, and we did see lower lows in this pair. I do expect now this to pull back and retest the 0.745 area here, which is a minor support area. I'm looking for this to become resistance. If we do get a move back into here and we stay below this downward sloping trend line, I would expect to see the 0.735 area, this area down here being tested next, and even further down to the 0.7300 area if this maintains itself below this downward sloping trend line. US dollar CAD. US dollar CAD is one I'm going to be keeping my eye on very closely next week. We did get a breakout and a pullback down here, but either way, this is one we're looking out for next week because we did get a break above this key area of resistance of 1.358. You can see the sell-off we got actually on Friday. I mean, this is quite a big sell-off. It's actually an engulfing candle. So we are looking at playing this two ways potentially next week, all things going to plan. Let me just take you back to oil quickly. As we know, oil affects the Canadian dollar both positively and negatively. So if we do get a pullback into this kind of support area turned resistance, we're going to see oil strength, oil weakness. And if we see oil strength or weakness, we are very reasonable to suggest that we will get Canadian dollar strength, Canadian dollar weakness. So with that said, let me take you back to the US dollar CAD pair. So if we are anticipating oil to pull back and have some strength, we could consider the Canadian dollar to have a little bit of strength before some weakness, in which case we would be looking for a pullback and a trade, short trade down into this area of the 1.35866. And then once we get into this area and oil has pulled up, we might see a decline in oil, which could correlate with a bounce from this area, and we'll be looking to take it up to the 1.3846 area. So just to clarify, we are looking for a move in the US dollar CAD to the short side first, potentially next week, and then from here taking longs up to the 1.3846 area. So is it going to play out? I don't know, but that's the plan, and we're going to see how this unfolds next week, and if it provides the opportunities we think it could. New Zealand US dollar. New Zealand US dollar is there's not a lot of room to play with here. It's actually in a wedge. It wasn't a wedge by these lines. Well, it is in a wedge. You've got this line here and this line here, putting it in a wedge. But it was actually in a wedge within a wedge. And as you can see, it broke down below this support level here and it pulled back. We did expect to see further declines, more likely from this area. We did get them, but not very significant. I mean, it pretty much came down to the lows here and bounced. It is now retesting this, so I would expect this to now come down from this area and retest this major upward sloping trend line here. Not a huge amount of room, probably doesn't give as good opportunity as some of the other pairs. Euro pound. Euro pound broke out of this major upward sloping trend line. As you can see, it comes all the way back here. This point here and this point here. It did break out of here and it bounced from this support area at 0.833 and it pulled back, and it has kind of retested this major upward sloping trend line as well as this previous broken support level turning resistance. So on the technical sides, I would be looking at this now to decline from here, closing this gap and retesting this 0.833 area. However, we do have fundamental news from the euro, and if Macron does win as the traders have priced in, we could be seeing a bounce back up, potentially inside this wedge. If that does happen, I'll be looking for the wedge top and this key resistance there at 0.60. So we'll just have to keep an eye on the euro pair, see how they unfold after the French elections. Euro Japanese yen, again, we have to keep French elections in mind. However, we did get a major breakout here of this wedge top and also this key area of resistance here. So we are now looking at Euro Japanese yen. We are looking to initiate long trades on this pair for the foreseeable future, as long as it maintains itself above both these key areas of resistance, which could turn support. And we're going to be looking to take longs up to the 127.23 area up here. However, this is not going to happen next week, or I highly doubt it's going to happen next week. I can't say it won't happen next week, but I can say it's not likely that it's going to happen next week. So what we're looking for next week is a pullback into this kind of area, a retest of this broken resistance area, and possibly even further down to retest this broken wedge top. So if we do get a trade below here, I'm not going to be looking for shorts, because you can see the momentum in this. I mean, this thing is, you don't want to be selling into this. So we are going to wait for a pullback, and then we are going to be looking at getting on board this move to the upside and capitalizing on this momentum. So we do expect further bullish moves in the Euro Japanese yen in the for the foreseeable future, really. Pound yen. Pound yen, similar to Euro Japanese yen, has broken a key area of resistance here. We are now waiting for a pullback next week, and we're going to be looking at taking longs in the pound yen potentially next week up to the 148.28 area. A retest of this top, and also this bottom over here, as you can see, forming a key area of resistance. So we are looking to initiate longs in the pound yen, similar to the euro yen, next week. Franc yen. Franc yen is right in between this support level here and this resistance level here, so not a lot of room to play with. I much prefer the euro yen and the pound yen. If we get a break above this area of resistance here, I am looking at this to test the top of this downward sloping trend line here. Ideally, what we want to see on this pair is a breakout, similar on the euro yen, breakout of all of these areas of resistance, so we can look at initiating longs, because we are seeing this as a corrective move of this impulsive move up here. So we do expect further highs to follow. Once we're cleared of this downward sloping trend line here, we could see some really good moves in the franc yen. But as it stands, probably one to leave. Much better get involved with the pound yen or the euro yen. If we start seeing it break down to the downside, we could be seeing a retest this support area, or even this support area here. However, going to be a little bit dangerous getting involved in shorts in this pair, in my opinion. Pound franc did break through this resistance area here, and we got this kind of continuation move to the upside. We were then looking for some long positions in the pound franc, but we did note primarily this major downward sloping trend line, as this is actually a long-term wedge. We got a bounce off of this, and we got a bounce 1, 2, 3. It was a number of days here, so I am now expecting pound franc to potentially come down and test this support area at 1.265. It is in an uptrend, as you can see in the daily time frame. It's trending up, it's making higher highs and higher lows, but because of where it's sitting, I would expect a pullback to this support area here. If it does break out of this major downward sloping trend line, it hasn't got much room to go before this resistance, but if we get a breakout of both of these areas, we do pretty much have a clear run up to the 1.31 area up here. So pound franc, I will be cautiously looking for a short position on this next week. However, if we start getting the breakout to the upside, I'll be looking for these two barriers to be cleared before we take it up to the 1.31 area. EurUsd. EurUsd broke above this key area of resistance here. You can see it actually broke through here, came up, tested this. They knew where this was, pulled back, and did continue in the uptrend. I am expecting potentially something similar to happen here as we saw down here. So I'm expecting maybe a few days pullback before this breaks back through into this area and continues this move to the upside. There is a risk we could see a deeper correction in this pair. As you can see, there hasn't really been any deep corrections in this pair yet, and people might start trying to take profits. So we could see a deeper retracement, but personally, I'd rather look at trading with the trend on this. Ideally, if we get a break up into this area here and above the 1.48 area of resistance, this is where I'd like to see this pair come before we can look at initiating longs up to the 1.507 area. So again, I do expect to see something similar here than we did back here. However, just be aware that a deeper correction could come in, and we could be looking at a test of this 1.46 area down here. So keep that in mind, but I'd like to see this coming into this area, and I'd like to look at initiating longs in this area up here rather than trading counter trend. EurCad. EurCad broke above this key area of resistance, and it is coming down now. It does look like it's testing this now, and for this area of resistance to become support. We could be seeing now moves from this area up to the 1.5258 area up here. So I am going to be looking at potential long positions on this pair, because if we do start seeing a decline in oil, and if Macron does win the election and this pushes a little bit higher, that is two nice fundamental reasons to take longs on this pair. If, however, this breaks down and it starts coming back into this area, then we could see a retest of this downward sloping trend line. However, I would suspect probably this is going to hold if oil is on the decline, and like I say, if Macron wins the French elections tonight. So EurOcad is one to keep your eye on for next week. Could be looking at some nice opportunities up to the 1.52 area. AussieCad. AussieCad bounced off of this downward sloping trend line up here, and it bounced off with some real, I mean, this capitulated pretty hard. It came straight back through this resistance level, did not act as support in any way, shape or form whatsoever, and it is now sitting at this lower support level. We are now looking for a potential move from this area up to the 1.025 area up here. However, because of this sell-off and the amount of sellers involved here, may be a little bit risky taking this trade. If we do get a bounce from here, this could be a good position to start looking from shorts from this area. Or if we do get a breakdown below this area of support where it's sitting now, would be looking for some accumulation or a correction in this area, and could be looking at taking this all the way down to the 0.99 area down here, and even further to the bottom of this wedge, because you can see, if I zoom out a little bit, this is in a pretty big correction here. So this thing is bouncing. So we do have some nice targets to the downside with this major upward sloping trend line, and also the key area of support on 0.993. The question is, are we going to get a bounce from this level up to the 1.025 area? Could be risky to trade, but depending on how it sets up, could be a nice trade. And if we are taking this to the downside, are we going to get a trade from up here, or are we going to get a break and a pullback and some correction or accumulation in here, which allows us to enter into this to the downside? But I would be favouring shorts on this pair, and if we do get into this area, this could be a very nice currency. Aussie Japanese yen. Aussie Japanese yen, we did get a retest of this resistance area, and after it popped up and tested it and entered into this area up here, did again break down below. So a little bit no man's land here, because we could be seeing higher highs on this. As you can see, it is starting to trend to the upside. However, it's come back down again into this kind of gap area. So nothing really clear on the Aussie Japanese yen. We could from this area see a pullback into the 83.89 and a retest. I'm almost certain we're going to get a retest of this area. But the question is this going to hold as resistance? If it does hold as resistance, we're expecting a retest of this major upward sloping trend line in this area here. However, what I'd really like to see on this pair is it break back into this territory and hold, get some accumulation or a corrective pattern in this area, and then I'm going to be looking for longs up to the 85.80 area of confluence, because we also have this downward sloping trend line and this area of resistance here. So I would favour longs on the Aussie Japanese yen, but I prefer to see it back in this area before I start to initiate longs in this pair, or this currency pair. CAD yen. We were looking for shorts in the CAD yen last week, actually, because we did see some decline in oil, and also it was sitting underneath this. It was actually an area of confluence of resistance, because it was sitting underneath this downward sloping trend line. It was also in a kind of corrective pattern here. I mean, as you can see, this was the down leg, and it was kind of correcting up to this area of resistance, the downward sloping trend line, and also this broken support level, which we were looking to become resistant. So this was setting up really nicely last week, and we were looking for a move down to this area. It didn't, however, come, and we have now broken out of this downward sloping trend line here. The question is this just a bigger correction, and there are going to be more moves to the downside, or is this now going to be a move up to this, the next outer trend line here, or really it's a middle trend line? If that's the case, then we could be seeing all of these resistance levels tested and broken in the process. The only thing I don't like is oil does look like it is going to be traded to the downside. So If we do get yen weakness and we also get CAD weakness, this could be a pretty tortured pair. So from where it's sitting now, if we do get some accumulation above this broken area of resistance, and if this turns support, I am going to be looking for longs on this pair up to the 83.299 area. So I might try and time this with the pullback in oil we're expecting. If you remember, oil broke and now it's pulling back. If we see some strength in oil, I would be looking to trade this to the upside to this resistance area of 83.29, but be cautious, because if oil starts to sell off, you may see this become very troubled. New Zealand Japanese yen. New Zealand Japanese yen, similar to the CAD yen, it was sitting at this area of resistance and also this downward sloping trend line, so we had a confluence here. I'm not convinced yet that this has fully broken out of this area of confluence. In fact, this is kind of in no man's land at the moment. I would like to see this break a little bit higher and pull back. If it does that, we're going to be looking for longs up to the 78.92 area up here, and possibly even further to retest this broken major upward sloping trend line, but it would have to get through here first. If, on the other hand, we get a breakdown below here, I am expecting a test of this wedge bottom, because as you can see, this is a down channel. But with this, it does also become a wedge between these two lines here. So if we get a bounce from here, I'm looking for the wedge bottom at 76.53. But if this maintains itself above the 77.51 area of resistance and it breaks out of this downward sloping trend line and we get some accumulation, then I am going to be looking for longs on this pair up to the 78.92. But just bear in mind, we do have a cash rate decision on the New Zealand next week, as well as the pound. So keep an eye out for those next week. Pound CAD. We did take a trade on Pound CAD. It was nice. We got a break out of here. We were expecting it to test this upward sloping trend line. And as you can see on Friday, it did in fact test this area. And it sold off. In fact, it did sell off. And I think this was probably profit taking in this kind of area here. So what I'm expecting to see now on the Pound CAD is a pullback down to this upward sloping trend line. A retest of this support area here, or this resistance, which we're looking to potentially become support. It may push down a little bit further and actually come to this area of resistance, which could turn into support as well. However, if oil is going to start buying a little bit and then selling off, we could see that fit in with the Pound CAD, where we get oil strength and therefore Canadian strength, pushing this to the downside to test here. And then if oil sells off, we are going to be looking back for a retest of this upward sloping trend line and even further to the 1.806 area. But you can see this is an uptrend, so really we're looking for a pullback, and we're going to be looking at longs on this pair. Pound New Zealand. It has bounced off of this major upward sloping trend line here, so I do expect potentially, just based on the technicals, for this to come down, retest the 1.85 area, psychological area, and also this broken upward sloping trend line here. However, like I say, I'm probably going to avoid this pair altogether next week because of the interest rate decision on the pound and the New Zealand. So I think they are later in the week, so we could be looking at some shorts in this pair if they come early in the week. Otherwise, pretty much stay out of this, maybe trade it next week. If we start getting a break above here, we are going to be looking for longs into the 1.902 area. Pound Oz. Pound Oz could be a very nice one for next week, guys. We got a breakout of this resistance area here and a lovely pullback. I mean, it just pulled back right into it and it bounced from this area. I am expecting this now to trade into the 1.766 area of resistance. What we need to know now is a pullback, really, because as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4 days up. It'd be nice to see this pullback into this kind of area down here, and we're just going to look for a continuation up to the 1.766 area. So again, another one we're going to keep our eye on for next week, but we are going to note the pound interest rate decision, which they may start playing games with the pound pairs. Aussie New Zealand. Aussie New Zealand last week was sitting outside of this trend line. Because of this major up move here, and this is a correction, we were looking for potential longs as our bias. However, we did point out that there was going to be Aussie and New Zealand news during last week, and really we wanted to wait and see one of these pieces of news act as a catalyst. I can't remember if I said it in the last weekly video or the blog that I do for people, but I did mention that I was looking for the fundamental news to come out, and we were going to use that as a catalyst. So we were either going to see some push to the upside, in which case we were going to look to get involved up to the 1.106 area, which I still think is going to come eventually. I see this down move still as just a bigger part of the correction of this up move, and I see this as, you know, something like this. So I do see short-term selling on the Aussie New Zealand taking place. We do again have a New Zealand interest rate decision next week, so could do all kinds of things with the New Zealand pairs. However, my bias just on the technicals, which is all I can speak about now because the fundamentals haven't come out, we were looking for it to break down into this area and potentially test this support area here. So we were looking for trades if the news came out negative for the Australia and it traded into this area, which it did. We were looking for shorts into this support area here. It actually broke through this area, so I am now looking for a pullback or some correction technically in this area where it sits now, and a retest of this broken support level to become resistance. And I do see potential moves down to the 1.0600 psychological level. I expect this to be a pretty significant level, and potentially even further down to the 1.055 level down here, where it retests this major downward sloping trend line, which you can see it's broken out of here. So I do think a retest of this major downward sloping trend line could be on the cards on this pair, guys, but looking out for the 1.06 as a key area of support from this. So I do favor shorts on this pair for the foreseeable future, for the coming weeks. Aussie franc. Aussie franc was sitting in this wedge formation here. And it was also in this range denoted by this support level and this resistance level here. We did want to break out of these areas one way or the other before we're going to look to get involved in the Aussie franc. As you can see, it broke out of this major upward sloping trend line and it gave us a pullback into this area of support term resistance, and we got a really nice sell-off from this area. We did say if we get a breakout of this area and a pullback, we're going to be looking for a move down to this major upward sloping trend line. We did get a move down to this upward sloping trend line, and it actually broke through as well, and it even closed last Friday outside of this. So could be looking at a fairly significant breakout, but the problem we have is it did come down and test this key level of support here, and it bounced from there. So it's sitting in between these areas of resistance here and support down here. So what I'd really like to see on this pair is our biases to the downside on this pair. So we could see a pullback. It has retested this, and we could see some accumulation and further moves down to a double bottom and then further down to the 0.719 area. If it does maintain itself outside of this downward sloping trend line, then I am looking for the 0.719 area down here as the next move, or potential key area of support. If, however, this breaks back inside this major upward sloping trend line, I'm going to look for some accumulation. We could be looking for a retest of this broken trend line here and also this resistance area here. But look at this. I mean, it is trending to the downside, guys, so any moves up into this area could be pie in the sky and fairly ambitious. We really want to be looking to trade with the trend. So a break below this kind of and into this territory here, break below this level into this territory is really what we want to see on this pair before we start initiating shorts. Euro New Zealand. Euro New Zealand broke out of this resistance level and it pulled back very nicely. We were looking for a pullback and a move up. We did get that as it continued this up move and this uptrend in the daily charts. We do have Euro elections this weekend, as I keep saying, and also New Zealand next week, so this could be a funny pair. Technically, I would be looking for this to pull back maybe for another day down into this area, maybe a retest of the 1.58 psychological level before further moves to the upside. I am looking for longs on this pair now because it is into this territory, and the next key area of resistance is at the 1.612 area up here. So I am looking for longs on the Euro New Zealand into the 1.612 area of resistance. However, we'll just have to see how it plays out with the fundamentals looming on both of these currencies. New Zealand franc. New Zealand franc, it broke down this key area of support. It is actually a down channel as well. We were looking for a pullback into this area here, and we were looking for further declines on this pair, which we got. Price has actually bounced now on Friday. It bounced at the kind of lows down this area. I do expect further declines on the New Zealand franc. So this is another one to put on your charts. Again, a little bit frustrating. We have New Zealand next week. However, we might be able to get in and out. But this pair, I would be looking for shorts now in the coming weeks on this pair. And I'm going to be looking for a test of the 0.6700 psychological area as a key area of support on this pair. Also, we've got the downward sloping channel here. And then below that, I'd be looking for the 0.6655 area. So New Zealand franc is one that is on my list for shorts and to be watched quite carefully next week and the week after. CAD franc. CAD franc, we were sitting, we did get a breakout of this support level here initially. We came straight down to the next support level we had here, and when we got a breakdown below here, we were looking for some pullback and a trade into the 0.733 area of support here. It came down through that area of support, and I mean, you can see this thing has just been selling off. Once it broke down here, we were looking for a retest of this support level to become resistance. As you see, we've got a tag in this day, and were then looking for further declines down to this major wedge bottom, and also this, in fact, 3 areas of confluence here. We had the downward sloping channel here, the lower part of the channel down here. We also had this key level of support here at the 0.72 area, and we also had this major upward sloping trend line, the bottom of this wedge. Price did test this very, very deeply. In fact, it broke out, and it just broke out of the downward sloping trend line, but it actually failed to close below there, which could be fairly significant. So what I would be saying on a technical basis, if this does pop back into this area, I don't like to take counter trend trades that often. However, because of the amount of selling in here, we could be seeing some profit taking, and we could be seeing quite a hard move back up into this area of resistance. So I'm going to keep my eye on this just because of the severity of this down move. However, as you can see, there isn't really a huge amount of room to trade to the downside because we're sitting at this downward trend line. So I am going to be keeping an eye on a potential move back up to the 0.773 area. Whether that coincides with oil strength is yet to be seen. The only problem is if oil does start to decline again, the move up to here could be quite ambitious. So I wouldn't get too fixated on this. This is just in case some severe profit taking comes in after this move. I would like to see a breakdown below this support area and out of this downward sloping trend line. I'll be looking for shorts down to the 0.709 area of support if that happens. So we'll have to see how this one plays out next week. New Zealand CAD. New Zealand CAD has been a little bit troubled ever since it broke out of this major wedge top. It did bounce here, pulled back, and it broke up. It has broken out of this wedge now, and it has pulled back to this area of support. But you can see some selling actually came in on Friday. It doesn't look too good. So what I would like to see now is we might see another pullback in this pair to retest this downward sloping trend line. And then if we get a nice push up back into this area with maybe some solid closes on the daily, then we can be looking up to the 0.961 area as the next key area of resistance. As you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we've got a pretty clear run up to this area, 0.961. If this can start showing some more bullish strength coming into this pair. Again, New Zealand got the interest rate decision next week, and CAD is weak. So a weak CAD, a weak oil would favour longs on this pair. It could be a nice one if it starts to push higher here. Next, we're going to go to gold. Gold was sitting at this major trend line here, actually held, and it bounced from here. It has been setting up quite nicely, gold, because it came down to the support area. It tried to bounce, but it just ended up accumulating. We've got a breakdown here, and it did come down to the upward sloping trend line we were looking for here. Has now pushed through here, so I am expecting a retracement to retest this upward sloping trend line, and I would expect now further declines in gold to retest this outer trend line and possibly even the key area of support at the 1.200 area down here. So I'm expecting a pullback in gold and then further declines. The only thing I have with gold is if we are expecting further declines, we do have some tensions with America and North Korea, and we do have some other various geopolitical tensions. If something does happen regarding those geopolitical players, and there is, say, some conflict, you will very likely see gold pushing to the upside as people look to flock to this safe haven commodity. So something to bear in mind if you are going to look at taking shorts in gold or silver or anything like this. Just bear that in. Just bear the geopolitical tensions in mind, and maybe look to take short-term trades on these pairs or these commodities, these safe havens, without holding them over a weekend, say. We're going to finish with silver. Silver, we did actually break down below this. It broke out of this upper wedge first, and then it broke down back inside. So once it broke back inside this wedge and below this key area of support and resistance, we were looking for a retest of this support area down here and this upward sloping trend line. It did break through here, and once it broke through this area, we were looking for it to come and test the 16.14 area of support, which it has, and you can see it gave a little bit of a bounce last week. If this maintains above this area, we could be seeing some pullback in silver, because this is a pretty big sell-off here, so people might start taking profits, and this is probably going to need to retrace at some point. Depends on how severe this retracement will be. Once this actually retraces, we can be looking for further shorts into this. Support area here is a double bottom, or if we do get a breakthrough here, we're going to be looking at a major wedge low. If we get a breakthrough here, though, we'd probably have to go down to lower time frames, almost certainly. although that is where we reside normally. But if we get a breakdown below here, you would probably need to go down to lower time frames in order to actually get a trade to this major upward sloping trend line, as there's not a huge amount of room in here. So this is trending down. We would like to get involved with this to the downside, but unfortunately it's sitting at support, so maybe one we have to wait for. So that is it from me this week, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, let me know by liking and sharing it if you found it helpful, because that's the name of the game here. Just a note for next week again, pound and New Zealand interest rate decisions. Keep your eye on those. So apart from that, I hope you all have a fantastic week next week. I hope you all make some really nice profits. But this is it from me this week. Take care and good luck, guys.